Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe as you get older, it's harder to.
Well, thanks everyone for coming over. Great to see you all, and I know that we've got a lot of different perspectives to share here from folks who are working on reproductive rights and access to healthcare at the state level. Folks who are generally concerned and want to give voice to an issue that a lot of my constituents are talking about, and also how this issue needs to be addressed moving forward at the federal level. Clearly, what we saw with the Dobbs decision was an upending of 50 years of precedent, a Supreme Court decision that is wildly unpopular with the people of New Hampshire, as it should be, because it's an attack on fundamental personal freedoms. The Supreme Court rolled back Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey, landmark decisions that protected the right to choose. And now we're moving forward in a space where there are no protections for reproductive rights at the state or the federal level. And it's really a race to the bottom across the country. A third of women in this country are going to live in a state where abortion is banned. And we see the repercussions already in terms of the impact on individuals' health. Young women who have been raped that can't access the care that they need. Women who can't get care when they go to a hospital in Texas, for instance, in very emergent situations. This isn't the America that we should be living in right now, but it's been brought to us by the far-right majority on the Supreme Court that is cheered by the candidates that I'm running against in my race for Congress. So this is important to be talking about as we think about the federal races this fall. Because if we're going to undo the damage of the Dobbs decision, we need to have protections on the books nationally that stop this insanity of these policies that are restricting individual rights and are jeopardizing the health and well-being of individuals. People will die as a result of this Supreme Court decision. That's really chilling. And I just know, based on my conversations with folks across New Hampshire, that they're not going to stand for it. And so I'm really glad that we've got some folks here who have been champions on these issues. I'll say that New Hampshire has seen some bumps in the road when it comes to protecting access to health care. We know that we have an executive council that's defunded Planned Parenthood and other family planning providers in the state, not because of abortion, but I guess the opponents say that they did that because of abortion, but we know that those services are important, and Cindy, you can speak to that, because they provide basic care, cancer screenings, annual exams through the family planning program. It's one of the reasons why I ran for the council back in 2012. We were able to reverse that decision back then. And here we are facing the same situation. But it's motivated by the same extreme, out-of-touch politics that characterizes the folks that are running in my race, folks that are sitting around that executive council table, and the people of New Hampshire need to know about the record, about where people stand, and about what is at stake this fall. So we're going to continue to work hard in our race to make sure that we're not sending someone to Congress who thinks the Supreme Court decision was a good decision for the people of this country. It was not. And we know that the next step is going to be a move to put into law a national ban on abortion should the far right take control of the House and Senate. And so that's just inconsistent with our values here in New Hampshire. We've got a lot of proactive steps we need to take right now. We passed the Women's Health Protection Act a couple of times through the House that would codify Roe at the federal level. We need to be protecting individuals' privacy when it comes to health care. We've heard stories of data being shared that could punish women in certain parts of this country. That's just wrong. We also need to make sure that people can travel to get the care that they need. The right to travel is guaranteed by the Constitution, and it's crazy to me that some states would go after women who are traveling to other states to seek care. I think that just shows that this whole conversation is not about what's best for people, it's about power and control. And I think that strikes people of New Hampshire the wrong way. It's one of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of enthusiasm for pro-choice candidates up and down the ballot this fall. I think that's going to only continue as we get closer to November. So thanks for being here. I'd love to hear your perspectives, and maybe we'll start with Cindy, who's been leading the charge on access to women's health care as a member of the Executive Council.
Thank you, Chris. As you know, the Dobbs decision was a dark day for our country, and it's also happening right here in our state. And to be clear, freedom for women starts with being able to make our own reproductive health care decision. It starts with being able to plan and prevent and space our pregnancies. And this is a frightening time for women. It's really a frightening time for women across the country. A pregnant woman really can't feel safe going to a hospital right now and getting emergency care in many places in our country. And it's not just in Washington, as you said. We're seeing this right here. At the Executive Council, they have defunded family planning services across our state. They have done it based on their anti-abortion stance, using that as an excuse, but they've also made it clear they're not stopping there. Two of them are opposed to contraception for minors, and they're coming after contraception as well. When they defunded Planned Parenthood, and the family planning services, they defunded cancer screenings and treatment for sexually transmitted diseases. They defunded contraception for the most vulnerable women in our communities, and they did that without regard for the health and the welfare of the women of our state. And I have personally called on the governor multiple times to bring those contracts back. He has. And those counselors, those 4 Republican counselors, have voted down family planning services over and over again, and they really need to be held accountable. This is a pro-choice state. The women of this state support a woman's right to choose, and these counselors do not reflect the values of our state. I recently called upon the governor to execute an executive order to protect the physicians and providers in our state from extradition if they provided services to women who came here from another state. I'm still waiting to hear what his response is to that. But this fight is here. It's on the ground here in our state, and we need pro-choice candidates up and down the ballot. We especially need you back in Congress. We need our majority in the House, and we need pro-choice candidates who are going to adopt laws that will, as you say, protect women all across our country. And I'm thankful for you and for the work that you're doing to protect women. Thank you.
Well, thanks for your advocacy. And you know that the family planning program has actually reduced the need for abortion over the last many decades, and has improved the health of vulnerable communities in our state. So it's an important investment. Thanks for fighting that fight. Senator Kavanaugh, you've seen a few different aspects of this issue, and maybe you can talk about your time in the Senate and also as a candidate for the council, what you're hearing from folks.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And thank you, Cindy, the only voice in the Executive Council to stand up for the health and well-being for really Granite Staters this past 2 years. And I want to be there with you to keep that fight going. It's been incredible to me, and as a small business owner yourself, a business owner, it's such a personal issue, and things that, my mother was a strong woman, my 2 sisters are strong women, my wife and daughter are strong. I think about my 21-year-old daughter, who, grew up in a way would have those rights and was taken away. It's just incredible to me, right? But there's also some economic issues that we're going to tell women when and how they can have kids. We're going to lose more people to the workforce. You've seen it. I've seen it everywhere you go, the shortages we have in the workforce. And that's going to make it even worse. And it's just going to make it tougher on families in these economic times when the budgets are so tight. Family budgets are so tight that it's going to make it more difficult. And it's just, we can't be more restrictive in this country. And you in Congress, we have to get you back there to codify Roe. It's just, it's such a national issue that's a local issue. And it's so important that we all come together on this. It's just, and thank you all advocates for being here to stand up and take on this extreme side of views from the Republicans. And it's just, the decisions they make are for the extreme sides, and it's just wrong. It's wrong for New Hampshire, it's wrong for the country. And I'm proud to be here with all of you, and you as my congressman, and can't wait to do anything we can to get you back to Washington. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Dan.
Well, thank you, Councilor Pappas. Before I start, I just want to say thank you for being in Congress and for supporting our values and the values of all the women in the Granite State. And thank you to you, Cindy, for doing it at the Executive Council level, and to you, Patty, for doing it in the State House. There are, last time I checked, over 683 females in the state of New Hampshire. Does that sound about right? I think as of 2020 census?
683,000?
Yes,
Yeah.
females in the state of New Hampshire. And I think over 60% of the people, the voters in New Hampshire, support a woman's right to choose. What frustrates me is the discussion around the topic of abortion is extreme. When people talk about abortion, they either are speaking on it to either say they are for it or against it, or they are referencing stories in the news that are extreme and profoundly sad. You brought up a few examples in your notes previously. The truth about abortion is that 1 in 3 women have one. It's deeply personal, and it's not our business. Women seek an abortion for their own reasons. It is not your business. It is not my business. It is not Matt Mauer's business to seek as to why they seek an abortion. And it needs to stay that way. Abortion is a social good. And the government needs to stay out of women's bedrooms, and they need to stay out of the doctor's office so that women and their families can make this decision personally and privately. And I think that you'll see at the election that America will vote for pro-choice candidates because America wants this right to continue for women.
Well said. Representative, thanks for being here.
You're welcome. The legislature this past session was pretty disturbing. A lot of bills were brought up or passed that were not representative of the constituents in the state of New Hampshire. A lot of bills were the bill that was snuck into the budget last year that had the ultrasounds put in, and things that were brought up that were no abortions at the 3rd trimester, which nobody wants anyway unless it's an extreme case. And they tried to pass things with no exceptions for rape or incest or anything like that. So it was very distressing. And I think the worst part is, as Ann said, the extreme stories that are repeated that aren't true, that people just say. And the fact that the people that have been voted into the legislature aren't representing the wishes of their constituents. And I thank you for being there, because I think all the people running against you are at the extreme of the other side that wouldn't be representing the constituents of New Hampshire in how they feel, because New Hampshire has always been and still is a pro-choice state. And the other candidates, I think one of them, Lovett, was saying that it's in the Constitution. Pro-life is in the Constitution, and that means that we should never have any abortions. And they're just changing things to mean what they want it to say, which is completely wrong. So we just have to keep you there.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. And, I think it shows how the Republican Party has moved in an extreme direction. This used to be an issue that brought Democrats and Republicans together in New Hampshire. I think it's much less of a political issue when you actually get out there and talk to people, because it's a personal issue, it's a family issue, it's an economic issue. People don't see it through that lens, and I talk to a lot of folks who are conservative, who echo what you said, Ann, which is that they don't think government should be involved in this decision at all. And I think that's consistent with where most people are in New Hampshire. So we're going to keep talking about this, and I'm just grateful for you all to be here to help give voice to what is something that a lot of people are thinking about and want to see action on in Washington and in Concord in a positive direction. So with that, why don't we take some questions if folks have them?
For folks who are morally opposed to the concept of abortion, what do you say to them?
Well, we respect everyone's viewpoint, and I think this is a private, personal decision, and we should respect the choice that individuals make. What Roe does, and what we would do by codifying Roe at the federal level, is it would ensure that people have access to the care that they need early on in a pregnancy. No state would be able to pass a law that restricts that. But I think Roe strikes a balance, and we've had that balance for nearly 50 years in this country. And to just upend that really threatens people's personal freedoms and individual rights. So clearly we've got to respect everyone's viewpoints, but this is an attempt by a very radical political minority to impose their will on the rest of us. And I think the people of this state and this country aren't going to stand for it.
How do you feel this will impact the midterms?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we'll see how this plays out. We're talking about this issue because it's on people's minds and because folks are deeply concerned about it. And so I'm reflecting what I'm hearing from people all across my district. We've done some important work on this. We'll continue to see what we can do, but clearly this issue is on the ballot in November. We need pro-choice majorities in Congress and in the legislature to protect people's fundamental personal freedoms. And so by people showing up and having their voices heard in November, that's going to make a difference.
So apart from codifying Roe, what other specific steps could be taken in Washington to secure the rights you hope to be secure?
Yeah. Well, there are a few bills out there that help address some of the implications of the decision when it comes to travel, when it comes to data privacy. I think that this is a time where we also need to lean into making sure that people have access to basic health care, contraception, family planning, the Title X program, which was gutted under the Trump administration. That funding has been reinstated for providers. Obviously, we've got some roadblocks here in New Hampshire that we hope to solve, but by delivering that kind of quality, essential care to people, we help meet their needs. So those are some of the steps that we hope to take. It's clear that we need some more votes in the U.S. Senate to get these things across the country.
I mean, you've obviously run in many elections, and in every election, Democrats in New Hampshire say, abortion rights are on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
This time there's obviously more substance to that than there sometimes has been.
Yeah.
Do you really expect this is going to be any different than any other election in New Hampshire because of these matters?
Well, I absolutely do. We don't have a backstop anymore. We had the Supreme Court that at least was standing up and defending the constitutional right to seek an abortion. That is no longer the case. And so without that, the decision-making has been handed to a bunch of politicians at the state level and the federal level to determine the path forward. And we've got to make sure that they're reflecting the will of the voters. So this November's election is going to have the biggest impact on reproductive rights in this nation's history because of the lack of the willingness of the court to abide by their own precedent. So that's just the situation we're facing. And I just think that based on the conversations we're having, what we're seeing through our campaign as people show up to volunteer and want to help out, people are very motivated by this. I think you can look across the country to some of the other elections that have been held, including the recent special election in New York. It's going to be a decisive issue.
During the pandemic, some folks on the right started using the phrase "my body, my choice," which is a term often used in the past by women seeking abortions. Do you feel that that phrase has a different meaning now after the pandemic, or is that just a false equivalency between folks looking for bodily autonomy for vaccines versus bodily autonomy in this case?
Sure. Well, no one is going to be forced to take a vaccine. But I think that people feel the issue of reproductive rights very personal, and I think that's just been a long-standing tradition in New Hampshire that no one wants a politician or a judge in the room at a very personal moment like that, dictating what has to happen. What you're actually going to see in some states right now, because of the Dobbs decision, is government-mandated pregnancy. And what exactly does that look like for a woman who finds herself in that situation? It's just really Orwellian that we're facing this. And so, I think people feel this very personally and feel like it's a violation of their fundamental rights, and that this is a real overreach by the far right that has brought us this decision. Okay. Well, thank you all. Keep up the fight.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
it's great to be
Good
with
work.
you.